Welcome patrons to the very first ever Warhammer 40k Creepypasta Patreon edition, brought to you by One Mind Syndicate. I am your host Kirsch1, and today we're getting into another creepypasta, like I mentioned before. First off, thank you so much for being patrons. It's because of you that we can continue to put out awesome content like this, and because of you, we're going to be able to put narrative campaigns. The way this is going to work is for the first couple narrative stories or creepypastas, we're going to give them first to you guys, and then a month later we're going to post them on YouTube. The reason for this is the purpose of the creepypastas is for us to build our narrative storytelling skills. So in order to do that, we need to get advice, criticism from viewers so that we can improve on those narrative skills. Once we get going with our narrative skills, the narrative campaigns are going to be exclusive to Patreon. So keep that in mind. If you're listening to us on YouTube, you get exclusive videos once our narrative campaigns get going, and then at the same time you get first look at our experimental projects. With that said, let's get to the creepypasta. Somewhere in the fringes of Imperial space, rogue trader Darpin enters a small dilapidated bar to have a pint to drink before he sets off deeper into unknown space. A year and a half, he has been on his expeditionary voyage, and his crew has already become tired of his inexperienced yet arrogant persona. Needless to say, he dines alone. "A spirit tonic, please," rogue trader Darpin asks the barkeep. The barkeep looks at his assistant servitor and back at Darpin. He says, "We don't serve that here. We have rock gut booze." Darpin agrees for a half pint and sits at the bar in silence. The bar was filled with travelers that were coming in and out, exactly what you would expect from a refueling colony this far from what Darpin saw as civilization. This also meant that the bar had a good amount of Xeno scum. At one point, Darpin looked around and saw that the only humans in the bar were himself, the barkeep, and two strangers off to the corner of the bar. Darpin was on his fifth drink, and when the rock gut snuck up on him, he was drunk. Too drunk to notice the two strangers staring intensely at him. One was a very frail and weak-looking man. His hair was almost all gone, with only a few very long strands of hair filling the perimeter of his lower scalp. The other stranger was oddly enough a child. After wobbling back from the bathroom and trying his best not to get near the three blood-axe greenskins that were arguing with each other over what looked like a piece of scrap junk, Darpin sat back in his chair and was approached by the frail man. "Hello, sir. I saw you from across the bar and noticed your sigil hanging from your holster. Are you an agent of the Imperium?" Darpin may have been inexperienced, but he knew admitting to be an Imperial agent in a place like this was not the best course of action. "This thing, I bought it off some stupid rattling on the planet Redfort. No offense to your friend if he's a rattling." Darpin pointed and waved at the small boy who he had just insinuated was a rattling. The frail man turned to look in the direction and quickly turned back. The boy simply looked at both men, his facial expression not changing. Suddenly, the rogue trader felt a chill going down his spine. It was enough to sober him up a bit. Shaking, the man pulled out a small amulet from his pocket and offered it to the rogue trader. The man explained he found this amulet on a planet far from Imperial space. He believed it was a relic from the Dark Age of technology. The rogue trader looked at the man surprised. "Who are you?" Darpin asked. "That's not important," the frail man responded. "I will offer you this relic. I only ask that you pay for my voyage back to the Imperium and 300 Imperial credits." The man extended his hand to give the relic to Darpin. Darpin glanced at the relic and then over to the boy, his position and the stare still not changing. "We would need to get this verified by the adepts of the Ordo Mechanicum, the Inquisition." A disturbing sound shot through the air, so disturbing that Darpin had to check his ear. He looked at the man who appeared unshaken by the sound. No one in the bar appeared to have heard it. He glanced over at the boy, but he was gone. The man pushed the amulet farther out toward the rogue trader and said, "Please, just take it." Suddenly, his ears began to bleed. "Your ears are bleeding," Darpin said as he checked his own ears for blood. No blood. "You heard the noise too?" he asked. The man stood motionless. His face began to move, as if his skeletal structure was melting from the inside. His facial features began to droop down. "I will explain what that sound was if you please take the amulet." The rogue trader curiosity pushed him to take the amulet from the man. The man stepped back, his lower jaw now visible as he attempted to smile. "Thank you," he said. "And the sound you heard is a sound you will become familiar with, and you must always keep the relic away from him." Darpin looked down at the amulet, a circular pin with geometric symbols carved into it. He can feel the weight of the amulet in his hand, and the so-called relic was emanating heat. As Darpin looked up, he saw the man walking out of the bar. He gave a chase to the man, only to be stopped by a large servitor. The rogue trader forgot to pay his tab. Darpin returned to the bar and reached into his pocket. No wallet. He looked at the barkeep, speechless. It was all a trick. The man must have made up all the bullshit about the amulet as a distraction while the creepy-faced rattling pickpocketed him. Fake blood and loud noises. What an act. The rogue trader sat down. "I wasn't leaving. I'm just getting started. Another half pint, please." Darpin could not be able to get anyone from his crew to come down and bail him out of this situation. He sat there, helpless and feeling stupid for falling for such a trick. Luckily for him, after a few minutes, the orcs in the bar began to fight. The servitors were too busy wrestling the greenskins to stop him from running out of the bar. It was dark at this point. Darpin was still feeling the rut-gut booze, but it was alleviating the embarrassment of being swindled. The streets became empty as he walked toward his transport vessel. There was an eerie silence unlike any that he had experienced before on the planet. All of a sudden, rogue trader Darpin saw a silhouette of a small figure. He marched toward the figure, who was standing in the middle of the road. As he got closer, he could tell it was the creepy-looking halfling from the bar. He unbuckled his holster and scanned the area for the frail partner. "You little stuntling piece of shit. You think you can steal from me and get away with it?" Darpin drew his pistol. The noise rang in his head. It was much worse this time, so much stronger that it caused him to drop his gun. He looked at the gun and looked at the small figure that had moved closer. He could now tell that it was no rattling standing in front of him. It was such an odd-looking thing. It must be another form of abhuman, or possibly even a Xenos. That would explain the use of sonic weapon. He scanned the area once again, looking for the creature's partner, who was probably behind the auditory assault. No sign of him. The rogue trader reached down for his gun. The pain resonated in his mind. Darpin was on his knees at this point. He looked up at his attacker, who was now standing about 10 feet away from him. The creature extended its arm. Nothing was said, but Darpin began to feel a burning sensation on his right thigh. It was the amulet that was now burning through the fabric of his clothes. He pulled out the amulet, which was bearable enough to touch. "You must always keep the relic away from him." Those words resonated in his mind. Darpin pulled the amulet away from the creature. Darpin crawled away from the creature. He somehow managed to get back on his feet and ran into an alley. The creature stood at the end of the alley. The rogue trader dashed in the direction of his transport vessel, only to run into the deep black eyes of the childlike being. It extended its arm again. Darpin refused to hand him the amulet, scared of what might happen if he doesn't follow the instructions of the previous owner. Squeezing through a poorly locked chain-link fence in a manufactorum, he would see light coming from inside one of the buildings. Maybe someone in there could help him. Inside the manufactorum, there were 3 startled human workers. "Please help! There's a creature chasing me!" Darpin pointed behind him. The men looked toward the door, expecting something to come charging in. Nothing. "He smells like booze," said one of the workers. "Look, sir, you can get into a lot of trouble for breaking and entering. This is private property." The men turned to stare at Darpin. "There is a small creature that has attacked me multiple times." Darpin stared back. "He wants this amulet," he said. "We'll give it to him," one of the men laughed. "Take it." The rogue trader offered it to the worker, but none of them would take it. Everyone stood for a second, not knowing what to do next. Suddenly, the creature appeared at the door. The men jumped back. The creature stood there, motionless. with an unchanging expression on his face. Rogue Trader Darpin fell to the floor from the noise. The other men stood unaffected. One reached out for a spiked tool from the table and threw it at the creature. With a loud thump, the tool connected with the creature, causing it to fall to the ground. Darpin, still on the floor, felt a sharp pain at the same time the creature was hit. The men approached the fiend. One reached down to pick up the tool and stood over the creature, ready to strike again. Its body laid motionless, but the men could hear the creature was still alive. Darpin walked over to the men. "I hit it right in the head. Maybe it knocked it out," one worker stated. Blood began to drip down the Rogue Trader's head as one of the men handed him a cloth and instructed him to put pressure on the wound. Darpin realized that the wound was in the exact same spot the creature was struck. The breathing from the creature began to get louder. "Hit it again," one of the workers said. The tool was swung again and struck the creature in the chest. Instantly, Darpin fell to the floor, gasping for air. It was as if the worker had struck him instead of the creature. "It's attacking him! Kill it before it strikes one of us," the worker yelled. All three began to pummel the creature. Every kick, every punch was felt by Darpin. The Rogue Trader was filled with so much pain that he could not stop them from attacking the creature, which was somehow connected to him. Like a living voodoo doll of ancient myth, everything that happened to the creature happened to Darpin. Feeling his consciousness fade, Darpin saw the creature reach out his hand, silently asking for the amulet as they continued the assault. With the amulet in his hand, he reached out, but for the first time, he saw the creature expression change as his eyes widened and fixated on the relic. Fear stopped the Rogue Trader, and he looked at the creature as he pulled his hand away. The last thing Darpin saw before passing out was the creature's frantic expression of having the relic move away from his grasp. When the Rogue Trader regained consciousness, he could tell he was no longer in the manufactorum. He laid in bed as a field surgeon and a servitor looked down at him. "You're awake, that's good. I was hoping the field injectors would work. I wouldn't move around too much. You have several broken bones and massive amounts of swelling all over your face and torso. But then again, you're luckier than the other guys," the field surgeon said. Darpin tried his best to talk, but any attempt to clear his throat was met with severe pain. The field surgeon looked at him and said, "You were found in the depot manufactorum, near the transport docking yard. You're the only survivor of whatever happened to you guys. The men you were with, they were all horribly slaughtered. There's a lot of people that want to know what happened." With extreme pain, Darpin managed to ask, "Is the creature gone?" The medic looked at him and said, "We found no one else but you. Rest up, because like I said, there will be people coming to ask you some questions in the morning." Darpin glanced over to the side of the bed, and on the countertop, he could see the amulet. He looked at the medic and pointed at the amulet. "Take it," he said. "Thank you for saving me." The field surgeon responded, "No need to thank me," and walked out the room, along with his servitor assistant. Darpin laid there in an empty dark room. In his mind, he could see the small creature's last reaction. In those last moments, Darpin saw that that creature was no Xenos or Abhuman, but something much worse. Coming from the deepest recesses of evil, that being was not of this world. What astropaths and psychers have always warned about, but never liked to discuss. It was a demon. His intuition to deny the demon's request proved to have saved his life. After all, he was the only survivor. But what would happen if he relinquished possession of the relic? You must always keep the relic away from him. The man's warning echoed in his mind once again. Was this amulet Darpin's burden to carry forever? He heard the familiar breathing coming from the room's darkest corner. He could see the outline of a small, menacing figure. It stretched out its hand, and the amulet that sat on the countertop now rested in Darpin's hand. And that was our second creepypasta. I hope you guys enjoyed this narrative story. There's more to come, like I said. Please comment down below and give me any advice, anything that you thought of this story that can help improve it. And again, any suggestions for topic ideas. Demon worlds or controlled worlds, whatever you guys want to hear about, be created into a creepypasta. I would love to hear. Comment down below. Thank you guys so much for being patrons, and if you're watching this on YouTube a month from now, know that you can get exclusive videos on Patreon like this one. Thank you guys for supporting us. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.